Has your child experienced bullying? If so, you want to stick around for this episode because our guest today has written a book about it, and we're going to get all the details for how to protect your child in this type of issue. Hi, thank you so much for joining the Falling for Learning podcast. We have this podcast to help parents and caregivers with having the resources, strategies, and tools needed to make sure that their children are on track for learning and to stay on track for success. Thanks so much for joining us, Dana Fikes. How are you doing today?
I am well. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Okay. So tell us, well, first of all, you should know about Dana as that she is a veteran educator and she is an author as well. And she's also an entrepreneur in other areas. So can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Thank you. Thank you. So, first and foremost, yes, I am an educator. I have worked in the field of education starting when I was 18 years old. I have an aunt who had an all black school in Pasadena. I'm born and raised in Pasadena, Pasadena area. Sending much love and positive energy to all of my family who's lost their homes and those who've been affected by the fires. So I want to get that out. I grew up in Pasadena, so my aunt had a school that she started with her friends. And when I became of age, I was the teacher in the 2-year-old classroom. So I had 2-year-olds. And at that time, I had my own son. So he was in the class too. I think he was 1. So that began my journey. I worked at Pasadena Unified, starting out as an instructional aide in the after school program. And fresh out of high school, went to Pasadena High School, went to Cal State LA. And at that point, didn't know what I really wanted to do, was unsure like most young people. And from there, I dropped out. It's like, just having fun and partying and having a good time. And then eventually working with Pasadena Unified, I was like, you need to figure out what you want to do with your life. And I remember we were talking earlier, and when you want to be the parent that supports your child's dreams. So if I would have done anything else other than being an educator, I would have been an actress. And that's what I wanted to do. My family was like, no, you can't do that. You need to go somewhere to make some money. So that was put on the back burner. So while I was working at Pasadena Unified, I was learning from, my co-workers and administrators going to school, and then you can, kind of get yourself higher up on the pay scale. So I went to PCC where I started learning about early childhood education and just moving through like the Pasadena Unified system. Okay. And then eventually I decided, yeah, I think I do want to be a teacher.
Okay, so hold on one second. You were saying
Yes,
that you worked with your aunt when you were of age. Tell us what that age was, because it sounds like you were really young.
I was 18.
Okay, so you were
I was
18 and then
18.
you were the
Yeah, I was
2-year-old
18,
teacher.
18, 19, working with the 2-year-olds. And so her school focused on all black children. The Swahili name is Amawale Ujamaa. She and a couple of her friends were the founders back in the early 70s. Okay. And they were Pan-Africanists who focused on the teachings of Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X. And so they are a pillar in the Pasadena community. She's no longer there. She had transitioned to a charter school maybe in the early 2000s, and now she's currently retired. But that's where I started. And so all of my, cousins, her children, and then my brother went, my son went. I never went there, but because that's my aunt, my mother's oldest sister, the family was very much a part of the school, including my grandmother who cooked all the nutritious meals. And she's where I learned about being vegetarian, although I'm 80% vegan now. But before it was like this thing for people to do now, like she was already on that trajectory with her friends. All they fed you were nutritious foods and things of that nature. So I've always been around education. That's just something that my family is, into. There's a lot of teachers in my family. So once I got back on board with what I was going to do in my life. Um, um, I was at Pasadena Unified, and I left at one summer. We had a guest come in from JPL NASA
Okay.
to talk about science with our students, and I asked the lady that came, could she tell me how I could get in to the lab, and she told me
Okay.
how, and so I left the district and I went to work for JPL and NASA.
Wow.
And so
That's
what I did,
amazing.
yeah, what I did was our mission looked at black holes in outer space
Okay.
through a technology called Space VLBI. And our mission, it was $1 million mission. So the reason why I had to leave, although my project manager, he found me something else on the lab, but I wasn't, really like sure, like, is this gonna, like, if this one ends, how can maybe another one will end too? So, but the time that I was with there, I worked with the engineers and the scientists, and we had a collaboration with Russia and Japan, and they would travel, so I would travel with them, and we would do like symposiums for the youth or schools. And so I would have to teach them, what I knew, and then we would do like arts and crafts that were mimicking like what our spacecraft called Halka looked like. And so the children would get to make those things like that, and it was fun. It was fun traveling and hanging out with the scientists, and then working on the lab, which was one of the most magnificent experiences I've ever had, part of my education journey. And so from
Wow.
there, right, from there, I went to work for Pac Bell, and didn't pan out. And I remember one day I was outside on my break, and there were these group of students on a field trip. They had to be like kindergarten. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember everybody's outside on their break, but the kids were walking by with their teacher, and they're all like waving at me like, hi, hi. And I took that as a sign. And so
Okay.
from there, I was like, I need to get back into the classroom. So I went to Head Start in Pasadena, and I was a teacher. Then I progressed up to teacher supervisor, and then I became a site director where I had sites in Glendale and in Pasadena. I was the early head site director, and then at that time we got ARA dollars from Obama when he was president, so I was able
Okay.
to open up early Head Start sites. Although we already had some with the agency that I worked with, but we opened up additional ones. And
Okay.
when we lost those ARA dollars, I was like, maybe I need to go back to the Head Start side just in case, like,
Can I
there might
stop
be an
you for a
issue.
moment? What's our R
Yes.
dollars?
ARA. So it was something that Obama did. So the ARA dollar, it was ARRA. So he did things like fix the freeways or whatever, and you could
Okay.
tap into that. So we used the ARA dollars that we received to open up more early Head Start sites.
Okay.
So that's how I was able to come on from teacher supervisor to early Head Start site director, because we received the ARA, ARRA. And I can't even tell you what the acronym's for at this
Right.
point in time, but it was the ARA dollars. And so
Okay.
when those ARA dollars started to diminish, I was like, I need to go back to the early Head Start side. I mean, to the Head Start side. So I did that. And so from there, I was working on my master's degree,
Okay.
and I had to leave there anyway because you have to teach on your degree. So I
Okay.
have two credentials. I have a general ed credential, which I got first, and I have a master's degree and an early childhood special ed credential.
Okay.
And
So can I give you pause you just for one moment because one
yes,
of the main things about the Falling for Learning podcast is talking to
uh-huh,
guests about what really made them fall in love with learning. So what
yes.
obviously you were working with kids in schools and you have been, you have an extensive amount of education yourself. When you were
hmm
young, what was that thing that really drew you into learning and made you love learning?
like I said before, I grew up in Pasadena, and I remember talking about this with some of my friends. I was like, I've never had a bad experience, maybe one or two, in my educational career. So in elementary school, so I was a Head Start child as well. Even I'm telling you that I worked at Head Start. I was a Head Start student. And then from there, I went to a school called Sierra Madre Elementary School, well, kindergarten there. And then first, second, third. And most of my teachers, I counted one day as I was an adult, Black women. They're Black women. And in these classrooms, I just had these wonderful experiences with
Okay.
learning. One teacher that stands out in particular, who I still know to this day, shout out to Miss West, Miss Juanita
Oh.
West. And she was the sweetest, kindest, loving, nicest, but firm. She could be firm. Like that wasn't her thing. She wasn't just a firm teacher. But if it had to come out, like,
Yes.
but in her classroom, the learning environment, the ecology in the classroom was very relaxed. And the learning that took place was from a comfortable, calm space where it was okay to fail. And I say that
Mhm.
because learning it should be messy for kids. And
Yes,
so
absolutely.
while learning is messy, you also want to feel like if you aren't successful, that you still have the opportunity to be supported and uplifted in that environment.
Right.
And so she did that seamlessly and effortlessly.
Yeah.
And so I had her for second and third grade. Um, and she's just a remarkable individual. She's a remarkable individual. So if I was to pinpoint any person other than being ensconced in my aunt's environment with school,
Hmm.
it would be Miss West because she was the
Lovely.
type of teacher that made you want to. You might not have thought you wanted to teach, but if you were around her, you would be teaching. But on that campus, Sierra Madre, so it's close to where the Eden fires started, right?
Okay. Hmm.
So in that area, there were a lot of nature enthusiast, and we were structured, and we sat close to the mountain, and there was this ravine kind of like Eaton called Bailey Canyon. So we
Okay.
would go on impromptu field trips like up into the
Mm.
mountain to go hiking, and we had a room on the campus called the Discovery Room. So it's like a
Oh,
science center. And
exploration.
yeah, this was a time where, everyone wasn't hyper vigilant whether or not kids were going to be injured and hurt. So we would make candles. We would make candles. I remember dipping the little, and we would make candles. There was guinea pigs in there. We would experiment with like batteries and electricity. We would make cinnamon rolls in there. Like, so it was like
Wonderful.
maybe you would go once a week from your classroom, right, to the
Okay.
discovery room or whatever. And so my experiences were that we had a noon aide, Miss Phillips, who's an older Caucasian woman. She had a pool. So after like summer, getting close to like June, she would invite you to go to her house to go swimming. And
Oh,
so the experiences, and then the where the school is like nestled against the mountain. So
can I
it's
just
just
can I
like this.
just say, like, you're so right. Right now, like a lot of these things are very much frowned upon, right? And so people who don't know, like we teach in California, and I don't know if your district or if you're like this, but for us, if it drizzles a little bit, our kids have to be in for recess. And it's crazy.
Inclement weather
Yes, it's
time.
like, okay, the kids might slip, they might
Yeah.
run, and they'll even say, okay,
Mhm.
this is a walking recess. You could go outside, but you got to walk because you might slip or trip or something
Right.
on the slick
Right.
concrete. So it's really
Yes.
crazy. Like they're hyper
Yes.
vigilant about it. And I don't know wherever you are listening or watching from, if it's like that for you. But it
Right.
does,
Right.
tamper down on some of those fun learning experiences. And of course,
Right.
Falling for Learning is all about like how could you have fun with learning and what were those experiences that you had as a kid? But some of that is,
And
well,
so
I guess
very
some people
much
are
so.
litigious, people
Yes.
will
Yeah.
sue
And
or
so very
whatever.
much so. This was a nowadays they probably would call it a lab school, and it
Yeah.
truly had a socio-constructivist approach. um totally Vygotsky, like you're going to be hands on in this learning. And like I said, we could go to Bailey Canyon. It would be like a walking field trip where your parents have already signed, so it wasn't like you got to wait till tomorrow. Like we could go at the drop of a hat right out the back of the school and then walking up into the canyon. And so those experiences and seeing that from, because I was at that school from kindergarten, first, second, third, and fourth grade. So that's 5 years.
Hmm.
Second and third, Miss West, who that she inspired me to want to teach. And then in fourth grade,
Wow.
I had Miss Nassif, and she was into theater and vinyl. And so we would listen to
Mhm.
Annie. That was the first time I had ever listened. And so when you're listening, you definitely have to engage your imagination. And then when she would read, so two of my favorite books, and now movies, which was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and then Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Because
Okay.
after her reading it, and then you seen it on TV, like that was a big deal. Like where they have books to go to, you know,
Yes.
theater now or TV, like it's just commonplace. But back then you're like, oh my God, my teacher was reading this book and now it's on TV. And as a kid, you don't know the process that took or whatever. And
Mhm.
so to this day, even for my son and my grandchildren, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is their favorite movie too. And
Mhm.
Annie, one of my favorites, because she would play that on vinyl. She also introduced us to The Wizard of Oz. And again, being with my grandma on like a Friday night and on CBS it comes on and like, oh my goodness, we were reading this in school. And
Yeah.
so to now match the characters with what was being read, it was just an amazing experience. And so that began my love of wanting to read books and adventure, like movies that had like an idea of adventure about them. And so I would say being at Sierra Madre would be the beginning of my love and how I, fell into learning and why I decided that I would want to be an educator slash actor.
The Rewrite Method and the Rewrite Method Workbook are your go-to resource for helping kids to learn to fall in love with writing. It has the tips, tools, resources, strategies, and skill building activities to help kids fall out of writing hate and into loving to write. Get your book set today. That is very awesome. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So many like gems in there, like just that exploration,
Mm-hmm.
bringing, connecting what you're reading to what you're, what you see on TV or even listening experience. Like those are some great things that I think, we as educators or parents need to remember or thinking about
Mm-hmm.
making learning fun for our kids. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So can you tell us, what do you like? I know that you have your book. Can you tell us about your book?
Okay, so I have it here. It's the pirate who loved flip flops. So,
The pirate who loves
so
flip flops. Okay.
yes, she loved flip flops, and so this came about. So starting back where I was telling you, being at Sierra Madre, and we read, and they read to us, and reading was a big thing and a big deal, and it mattered. So I've read books like Pippi Longstocking, and then Annie, and Fudge and Super Fudge, and things that to me had an air of adventure. So I love pirates. I love flip flops, and I'm sure my love of pirates came from being at going to Disneyland and experiencing the Pirates of the Caribbean, and then Pippi Longstocking and her father being a pirate. So from that, my imagination has always, been in the realm of what if I was to write a book or create a story, and what would that sound or look like? And so what I did was I took my love of flip flops, I took my love of pirates, and my love of my dog there he is. It's Kodak right
Oh
there. I
my
took my
gosh, so cute.
love of Kodak the Rottie, and I came up with this story, and it's the pirate who loved flip flops. So the premise is Mackenzie here, that's her. See her there, she's reading a book.
Yes.
And so she wasn't so much into, toys and things of that nature, other than her baby burp up doll. And so she loved, the swashbuckling adventures of being a pirate. And so in this adventure, she fills out an application because she wants to go to Pirate Con. And Pirate Con is a convention where all the pirates get together and they display their treasure. And then they, judges go around and they vote on it to see who has the best treasure. And it just so happens her treasure was something that was near and dear to her heart, which are flip flops. And so she gets talked about and demeaned and bullied by these pirates at Pirate Con. But she remembers that because she is the captain of her own ship, she gets to make new rules. So she gets their attention and gets the pirate code, and she goes to work. And she knows that whatever your heart desires, whatever the things that you are into, it is okay to be unique. It is okay to be different. And our similarities and differences are things that we have to relish and respect. And just because she liked flip flops doesn't make her an anomaly. She can like flip flops and she still can be a part of the pirate society. And she made a new rule and she admonished them for the bullying. And just so happens that other pirates come forth and they talk about the things other than treasure that they are into and
Okay.
love, but were afraid to come forward to talk about because they didn't want to be bullied and they didn't want to feel like that they were different and not accepting in this pirate society. And then she, goes on to encourage them and all the readers as well to always go after the desires of your heart. And if you want to know more, you got to go get the book. You got
Get
to
the book. So the
get
links are in the show notes. And yeah, so really support this book and these such a strong message for students, right? For kids out
it.
there that, we do often want to, you know, not stand out, to do the things that
Yeah.
everybody else is doing, what everybody else thinks is cool or interesting. And part of developing that self identity is being okay with being different and speaking up for the
Mm-hmm.
things that you like, no matter if other people like it or not, or enjoy it or
Yes.
not. And, that's really, that special sauce that we all have, right? That
Right.
individuality. So, what a
Right.
great,
And in the
great
pages of the
message.
book, the last page of the book, I do a call to action for parents, teachers, stakeholders, anyone who is in a child's world to help them understand what they can do if they are faced with bullying. October is National Anti-Bullying Month, and they have a website, and there's a plethora of information on there. At my school site, we even did a school-wide anti-bullying assembly.
Mm,
And what we did in collaboration with me, our school librarian at the time, and other teachers was I came up with the idea of them signing a anti-bullying contract. So we had a
wonderful.
big piece of construction paper, of the butcher paper, and we had our anti-bullying sign. And after each assembly, and I talked about it, we encouraged them to pick up a marker and sign their name to the contract that they would be upstanders and not
Yes,
bystanders if they
wonderful.
are, witnessing bullying of a friend and what they can do so that they feel empowered. And one of the things I didn't mention at Sierra Madre, I was bullied. I was bullied.
Mm,
And I remember being on the steps and a young guy, Scotty, in my classroom, I remember he pushed me down the stairs.
mm.
And this was in second grade, and it chipped my tooth. I had a chipped. I remember I have to go to the doctor and everything, and it didn't feel good at all, and that stuck with me. And even when I got to So at that time, they didn't have sixth grade in middle school.
Okay.
So once I left Sierra Madre, I went to Field Elementary, which is even closer, look further down the hill, but closer still to the Eden Fire area.
Okay.
And fifth grade had a similar experience. And so you might not know, but at your child's school, there are definitely going to be bullies, and your child may be being bullied and not know how to tell you that. I never told my mom. I know what to say, How do you say that? And then you have
Mm.
maybe older cousins or aunts or whoever's in your family who may
Yeah.
have experienced similar, but telling you how you have to stand up for yourself or, what to
Yes.
do. Maybe you got to fight or whatever. And you're like, well, what if I'm not a fighter?
Very true.
What if I'm not a fighter? So
Hmm.
how do I navigate that space, right?
Yeah.
So this book is definitely based upon some personal experiences
Okay.
where it wasn't until I got to high school and I was telling a friend of mine, probably we spoke like 2 weeks ago, that the one day that I remember I stood up for myself in high school.
Right.
And it was with my own group of friends that I hang out with, that they said, a couple of them thought that I did something and I didn't do it and I don't operate that way. And I was finally like, no, I have to speak up, because if I
Yes.
don't, then this is either going to continue and it
Yeah.
doesn't feel good at all. So I have to speak up. And many times I'll say this to parents, and if are sharing this with your children, that when they feel empowered, and maybe you do like what we call a social story with them or act it out, that strength and that empowerment that comes from the first time that they implement this is going to help them for the rest of their lives, honestly. Because then you feel
So
like
powerful. Wow. Hmm.
very powerful. Like they feel as if I was able to try that if in a safe space. And now they feel like, okay, now I've got my parents, they got my back, or my mom, or my caregiver, or whoever,
Yes.
my guardian. I'm going to try this out. And trust me, they will get an opportunity to try it out.
Yes.
And what I will say is when they do come to you and talk about it and speak about it, support them, support them. And even if they end up with the one with the referral, hear them out. You always want to hear them out first so that they will know this is still a safe haven for me and I can talk to you whether I was in the wrong or not, so that you keep that dialogue going. Because as they get older, we know, because we were all, teenagers and youth at some point, that
Yes.
conversation, depending on that dynamic of the
Yes.
parent, caregiver, and child, it will start to lessen. And
Hmm.
in that, then their peers, again, you already know that is the first influence for them. So
Yes.
you want to still be in the ballpark
Hmm. Yeah.
of this realm of influence. You want to
Yes.
be in the ballpark. So for me, it was personal, but my love of adventure. I'm a Star Wars fan. I consider myself definitely a Jedi. Like I said, I love
Okay.
all the pirate films, Pirate of the Caribbean. I love Johnny Depp. So all of those. I even dress up when I go to some of the schools. I've been to many schools within LA Unified that I
Okay.
go, and even on some weekends, dressing up as a pirate with my parrot on the side. The only one who can't go is my dog, because I think that would be a little scary for some kids,
So wait a
although they
minute. You
really
say,
want to see him. Mhm.
hold on. So you say you go on the weekend? Tell me more about that.
On the weekends, like some of the principals, if they want me to show up on a weekend to, like if they're doing at their site, some of them do literacy fairs
Yes.
and they do events, and they'll, reach out to me. Hey, I want you to come, and, we're having this event, and are you interested? And yes, okay, well, I'm going to have you on the flyer. Let's do this. And so, yes, those things.
Okay.
Author reads all the time. Pasadena Library. Shout out to, again, Pasadena. The mayor is also
Hmm.
someone who I went to school with. So
Oh,
at the
okay.
end of
Connected.
2020, yeah, at the end of 2020, I did a read online for La Pinnaresca Library, which was one of our libraries, and the mayor was on. And again, Victor Gordo, he's a good friend who I, matriculated through school with. And so that felt really good, knowing that, you can come back and then give to the community. And those roots, again, are instilled in me because that's what my aunt and her friends did in the community, from feeding, the youth to science fairs to events at the Jackie Robinson Center. So I come from that. And so it's like hard to
Carrying on
move
the
away. And
legacy. Why would you need
yeah,
to move away? Yeah, you're just carrying on the legacy. That's amazing. Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
Okay.
So it's just a part of who I am. And with that said, the other entrepreneurial things that I do have, I connect them with the educational piece simply because it's easy to do that, considering I'm 20-year practice, or 25 plus years, I think it was 27, uh, practitioner of yoga and meditation. And in my classroom, I noticed, there were students that weren't even in my classroom who would come into my classroom just looking for respite and help, and particularly with some bullying. The reason why they would be connected with me is when they see you on campus as someone they can trust. How do they know that? Because you say hi to them, because you're smiling at them and you see them. And I was at a small school at one point, and different assemblies, and some of them may have been in my classroom. If they presented with an IEP at one time, they may have um, moved past that and no longer have an IEP, but they're going to remember me. The families remember me. And then I did a collaboration with my pre-K students and third grade, following them through fourth grade, using surveys to see how the yoga and mindfulness program that I was implementing with them was helping them with their academic success and in their behaviors. And so I would track that, and we would have journals and things of that nature. So they knew it was a safe
That
space
is
in the
so
first place.
awesome. That
Yeah.
is just so awesome. Wow. And just really tracking, what did your results
Yeah.
show?
Yeah. And then at one point, we didn't have middle school. Then we got middle school. And so the middle school mentality. So I would see them sometimes. Again, these were some that I had, some that they just knew of me. So I was like, I need you to come back and write in your journal about, are you still using the practices? And, because it was hard to get them to come in, not because it was me, but because how the principal decided she wanted to run her school. So they didn't have that access to me as they would have liked, or, that to me should have been, because relationship building and behavior, they go hand in hand, because you can't shape
Wonderful.
behavior
You're
if
right.
you don't have
Absolutely.
relationships, and that is in your household and even in the school. So I wrote a grant. There was a grant that we were privy to, and wrote it up, got the funds because I wanted to create a room called breathing space on the campus.
Right.
Studies show that if you implement not just positive behavior interventions, but meditation, mindfulness, and yoga on your school campus as an alternative to corrective measures, again, you see a change in not only behavior, but their academic scores. And so I got tired of seeing the kids walk by my classroom and go into the office. Like, what are they going to do in the office? Once they're there, they're just sitting there. But if you have a space
Okay.
that uses trauma informed strategies, if you have a space where you are actually seeing, not just seeing, but seeing the children, right?
Okay.
If you have a space that is focused on the type of learners that they are, right? So coming from a sensory background, be it visual, auditory, kinesthetic, tactile, I put in the grant for all these different things, from
Right.
yoga mats to pillows. I wanted even a TV because I wanted to be able to show them documentaries that reflected mindfulness with children and students, and even
So,
letting them see themselves as we filmed different things and kept track of what we were doing.
and your grant
And
gave you
so
all those things?
the grant got me all those things,
Wonderful.
but what did not happen was it fully coming to fruition
Okay.
for whatever those reasons may be. But I know I did my part, and I did it in a
Okay.
big way. Did it in
So
a big way.
I'm just so impressed with all of your things. Again,
Yes.
Dana Fikes information is going to be in the show notes. And it sounds like you have, you go to school. So if people wanted to reach out to you, where would they find you?
They can find me on all of my channels are Dana Mac. My website is danamac.com. I even have my health and wellness, a separate website. It's Seeing Real Success. So that's my company. That's my LLC for wellness, coaching,
So say it one more time, a
retreats.
little bit slower.
So my first website is Dana, Dana, Mac, MACC.com.
Mm-hmm.
My health and wellness business is seeing with your eyes,
Mm-hmm.
realsuccess.com.
Okay.
So you can find me on those platforms, and then on social media, you can find me at Dana Mac on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and that's 2 C's, not CK, 2 C's. And so that's where you can definitely find me working on book 2.
All right. Awesome.
In the series, yes. And so our good friend is a STEM student, and she will be traveling to help her friends in Ghana with her prize possession that she's created for the science fair and won.
Okay, we're gonna have you
And
back on the show, it sounds like, because you have so many things to share and so many
yes,
resources and
yes,
information. So are there any last piece of advice or anything that you want to give to
absolutely.
parents and teachers out
Last
there?
piece Yes, last piece of advice that I would give. I started a nonprofit in my father's name, the Charles Fikes Foundation, that focuses on youth with ACEs. ACEs are adverse childhood experiences. We had the first Surgeon General for California. Her name is Dr. Nadine Burke, and she did not start this movement. She just picked up the work from the 1998 research that was done by the CDC and I want to say, was it UCLA that they had done about ACEs? And there's 10 that they look at. There can be many more ACEs. But what I would say to you is from a relationship base, Oprah has 6 ACEs. You might want to find out how many ACEs you have. And those are the things that are going to encumber our children when they are in school, from the academics to behaviors and things that you might see. Dr. Nadine Burke has been championing the pediatric world. When you get all these different screenings and things done, when your child goes in for a checkup, she's put it in place through her website. She has a website, numberstory.org, and then ACEs Aware, where you can go in and check your own ACEs. You can see what your child is working with, because that information is going to be tantamount to the type of services that you may need for your child and how they are operating in the schools. You may not even know any of this. This might be the first time you heard it. So I would encourage you to, number one, ask your pediatrician about ACEs. It could be, neglect. You might be a guardian who, or you've adopted a child. They may have had neglect. It could be a parent that was incarcerated. It could be a parent that is no longer in the family. It could be the events that we see happening right now that have become so,
we have talked
commonplace,
about this on our show before, and we've
but
had
you don't know.
people come
Yeah,
on. Yeah, but it's something that we need to continue to talk about and shed
we have to
and
continue to talk
light
about
on it.
the
Yeah.
ACEs. Yeah.
Okay, so
So
we're
that
going to
is the
put
work
all
that I
those
do.
links. Yes, yes.
Yeah, that is the work that I do as far as my nonprofit, and then bringing in STEM and social emotional learning to help mitigate those effects and put them in spaces where they are undervalued and underserved, so that they know that they can be STEM stars and they can regulate and learn what it means to co-regulate, self-regulate from a social emotional place.
Okay, bringing in those positive childhood experiences. Okay, all
Absolutely.
right. Thank
Yes.
you so much again for joining us on the Falling for Learning podcast. And all
Yes.
the parents and educators out there, make sure you're doing something today that will give the children you serve the competitive advantage. Thanks again for supporting the Falling for Learning podcast. New episodes go live every Saturday at 5 p.m. You can watch us on youtube.com at Falling for Learning, or listen on all major podcast platforms such as Apple, Google, Audible, Spotify, and much more. For more resources, visit fallinginlovewithlearning.com. We really appreciate you. Have a wonderful week.